Holy shit. Baldur's Gate 3, everybody. What a trucking game. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, everyone. We're going to review Baldur's Gate 3, and we're going to find out whether or not it is worth all the hype that has been thrown its way since its release a few weeks ago. Not only has this game defied expectations of the people who have been watching it for the last 5 years of development, but upon its initial release, it has been getting universal great scores from almost every publication. Pretty much everywhere you look, every place is giving this thing at least a 90 score. Now, I don't know about anyone else out there, but I can't remember the last game that actually came out and within the first few weeks of its release has been so well received by so many. Not only has the game received a lot of very good scores from a lot of the different publications out there that do this kind of thing, but it has also shot to the top of Steam's most played chart. It's absolutely crazy to think that over the last few weeks, there was a time where 28+% of the people who were playing something on Steam at any given time were actually playing this game. So before I continue to go too far afield here and start talking about how the industry loves this game and how some in the industry are talking about how this can't be the new standard, that there's no possible way that we could possibly live up to a game being this good upon initial release, we are going to talk about why this game is so good and why I believe you should all get out there and play it and spend your money on it, because it is going to be absolutely worth it. I have been playing tabletop Dungeons & Dragons for over 35 years. What? I have seen a lot of different digital D&D games come out, such as Baldur's Gate, Baldur's Gate 2, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, Neverwinter Nights. There's been a whole smorgasbord of D&D games that have come out through different places, different publishers, that have all hit both console gaming and PC. All that being said, this is absolutely positively the best one I have ever seen translated from the tabletop format to a digital setting. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I have been playing this game nonstop on my Twitch channel the last couple weeks since I finally decided to say screw it and give it a shot. And I cannot begin to express to you how much I've enjoyed myself. Also, come watch the Twitch channel, everybody. Cross promotion, baby, cross promotion. What we need to start with here is what drives a good RPG, and in my estimation, that is the story. Baldur's Gate 3 does this in an absolutely fantastic and massive way. As you make your way through the game, you're going to find that every decision you make actually affects the things around you immediately, and that they may affect it later on, and that you may find it affecting the world way down the line when you least expect it. I, for one, am not through this beast yet. I have put over 90 hours into this game, and just recently, I got to a part of the game where a decision I made in the tutorial finally came to some kind of resolution at the very end of the second act after about 80 hours of gameplay. To that note, I've spoken to a lot of people who have been playing this game since the release as well, and who have either beaten it or are ahead of me, and they say I have just begun to scratch the surface of all the different things that are going to happen as I make my way through this game, and are as a result of decisions that I made 50, 60, 70 hours ago. Without getting into too many spoilers, the game evolves in such a way that all the decisions you're making and the things that you're doing, you feel like they're going to end up, taking you to a certain spot. You are going to find out eventually that a lot of those spots are a lie, and that there is something completely else at play in the world that you're playing this game in. When it comes to this story and interacting with the other players in it, you're going to find that all the different encounters that you have in this game, they feel alive. They feel like they actually have consequences, like they matter, like all the things that you're doing really do affect the world around you, and that, well, maybe talking to this person over here is going to have such big ramifications that if I need help later on down the line, they're going to be there to help bail me out of the fire. With that being said, a lot of the times when you're doing this kind of thing, it just ends up being some side quest, and that you did all this work just because, well, it was there and that's how the living world works. I find this to be a super impressive feat because Larian has taken even the most minor of encounters and given it a weight and a feel through all of the different work they put into it, whether it's the characters who are voice acted and how well they express their motivations and their feelings on something. And it's just neat to see that you get all of these different encounters like that, but they end up potentially leading to just the completion of some side quest or to really no relevancy at all. This brings me back so much to my tabletop roots too, because in every good D&D tabletop session, you always think that the person you're talking to is going to be super important almost all the time. And you always find out that that person was really just some Joe Schmo on the street, and they have literally nothing to do with what you're trying to do right now. Which brings me to another really cool point of this game. Even the animals in this game have something to say. If you have the forethought to start your day by drinking a potion of animal speaking, or maybe having one of the characters in your crew cast that spell on you, any of the animals you come by will actually have a full-blown conversation with you more often than not. Some of them are incredibly kind and might want help with something. Some of them are just self-serving little shits as they're running around and trying to do their own thing. I'm looking at all the cats in this game. And then some of them that you meet are just outright assholes, like the mean-spirited bird you see behind me.
Everyone hates you.
What? Excuse me?
You're disgusting, ugly, loathsome. You should just shut up and die. Pathetic.
What did we ever do to the bird?
Still alive? How disappointing. Still alive? How disappointing.
What? As you're out and about and experiencing the world and talking to all of these people, or in some cases, some of these animals, you are going to find that you might end up into some kind of violent encounter unless your silver tongue can talk your way out of it. Now, that being said, while you do have that option in a lot of encounters, some of them are ultimately going to end up in a brawl, and you're going to have nothing to do but, lean back on your combat prowess and go ahead and haul your ass out of the fire. I'm definitely looking at the face spider encounter that I had at one juncture where, there's just no possible way you're going to talk yourself out of a fight with a bunch of face spiders who definitely want to eat you. And again, with all these situations, sometimes you're going to find yourself seeing the consequences of your actions, of whether or not you were able to talk your way out of it, if you were able to talk your way out of it with a positive or negative lean, or if you just ended up getting into the fight and everyone had to die. All of this stuff can end up affecting your run very, very soon if you have to talk to someone who might be associated with the individuals that you may have just put down. Or you could see it in a few hours, or hell, even in a few days after you've gotten a little bit further into the game. That is one of the wonderful things about this game, one of the many wonderful things about Baldur's Gate 3 and what Larian has done to build this world and flesh it out and really make it feel like it's a living world that has all these different consequences that are going to come about because of these decisions that you've made. As a result, you're never going to know whether or not the mercy you may have shown someone like a human or a goblin is going to catch up with you now or later. Are they going to be an ally, or are they eventually going to come back and end up shooting you with an arrow because they're still aligned with evil and you just happen to be on the wrong side of a certain talk? Which brings me to the combat. Oh my god, everybody. The combat in this game. Larian has absolutely killed the feel of a tabletop RPG and the fights that you find yourself in. What's great is that they've nailed it from the turn-based aspect that I am very much used to when it comes to tabletop D&D. And as a note, if you are brand new to D&D or any kind of RPG, I have talked to other folks who are also brand new to the property, and they have found the system pretty easy to actually pick up on and enjoy without too much fuss. And during those fights, you can do all kinds of ad-libbing, and again, this is one of the coolest things about the game. What's great about the combat is that it does follow the normal tropes of a D&D setting. When you're in a certain environment, you can start using different things to your advantage. For example, if someone is standing on a cliff's edge, you can run over there with your character, and if they're strong enough, you can shove them right off that edge. Oh look, there might be a bottomless pit over there. I'm going to go ahead and just shove him into that because not only do I not have to worry about how much damage he's going to take, but he's probably just going to die because that fall is going to be so deep that it isn't going to really matter. You can find yourself shooting down chandeliers on the ceiling if some poor sod's standing underneath of it. You can find yourself hitting a barrel full of alcohol and spreading it on the ground and then lighting it on fire when a bunch of people are standing inside of it. There are just so many ways to approach this game. And again, it doesn't always have to be, I'm just going to swing sword and smash guy overhead, or I'm going to fire bow into guy's back, or something like that. One of my favorite things that I've experienced anyway is when you see a group of enemies wander right next to a very large keg of explosives, and then your wizard just happens to go after all of them, and then you just happen to have fireball. And of course, as the D&D trope goes, I don't care how big or small the room is, I don't care what is going on right now, I absolutely am going to cast fireball at that. Let me tell you, watching a wizard chuck a fireball into an explosive barrel and not only have that fireball do damage to all those people, but watch that explosive barrel explode into a miasma of sparks and shrapnel, doing even more damage to those enemies, and then flinging them across the room is absolutely something glorious to behold. Since we're talking about wizards, I'm gonna go ahead and dive into all of the different ways that you can play this game. Larian has done a great job of translating pretty much all of the classes that currently exist in D&D 5th edition into this game, and it's great that you have so many options when it comes to all of them. You want to smash things? You got a fighter, a paladin, a monk, or a barbarian that's just ready to get into the thick of things and absolutely positively destroy everything with their fists or their weapons. You want to cast a bunch of spells? They got you covered. You got the wizard, you got the warlock, you got the sorcerer, you got the druid, and of course you have the holy cleric on deck ready to just drive all of that power into the battlefield. You say you like stealth. You like to creep up on your enemies. You like to put a, maybe a knife in their back, or maybe a sword, or maybe just an arrow. Both the rogue and the ranger are capable of doing this. Or maybe just because you're this kind of person, you want to literally talk the pants off of everyone. They also have the bard, which is definitely the guy who's going to get in there and make sure no matter who they are, what their preferences are, or who they might want to associate with, that bard's going to get their clothes right off. Ultimately, the awesome thing about all of these different classes is that none of them play the same when it comes to actually engaging with the game. Another awesome aspect of that is that none of them feel the same. When you're going through the world, when you're engaging with everything, whether it's combat or talking to people or getting into different situations and then trying to get yourself out of them, each one of them have their own ways of doing it. Sometimes you will just punch your way out. It's one of the fighters. Some days you will find yourself, using your divine powers to influence somebody as you're speaking with them and just getting yourself out of a, awful situation. What's even more brilliant is that each one of these classes at least have 3 different subclasses. So even if you do have a favorite class that you feel like you're just really resonating with, and if you decide to do a second, third, or fourth playthrough, you can play that class again and go through in a completely different way because they might just specialize on something different. When you include the 11 different races that you can play in the game and the different sub-races that all of those races have, the roof on where you can have replayability with this game is way, way, way up there and never going to be touched by a lot of games that you see come out these days. As you find yourself finishing your first playthrough, it's really easy to imagine that you can sit down, pick a new race, pick a new class, go ahead and get right in there, and then you'll find yourself encountering the same companions that you saw the first playthrough, but you may not use the same ones because they don't complement your class and you just need other roles to be filled out, and it just makes a more cohesive unit if you start using someone else. It's just really fantastic to see an RPG do this in this day and age where it just feels so complete like that, and you know that you can have some replayability. Even though you know you're going to see the same encounters, you can pretty much guarantee that no matter what, those encounters are not going to go the same way that you did them the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth time. Speaking of those companions, one of the other great facets of an RPG experience that Larian has just knocked out of the park is the amount of different companions that you are going to find on your quest through this game. There are 10 different companions that you can interact with on a playthrough. Another wonderful aspect of this game is that each one of them have their own personalities, their own motivations. They have their own ends when it comes to a lot of the different encounters you get into or the different things that you find through the main quest or even the side quests. And the reactions that they have to the player are going to differ as to whether you're a do-gooder or a super evil person or just someone middle of the road. You could find yourself helping a child and 2 of your people along with you love you, and the other one's kind of like, wow, you're really a goody two-shoes, aren't you? And then you could find yourself in a completely different situation where you're possibly kicking a squirrel against a tree and killing it, and a few of your companions are completely slack-jaw aghast at why in the hell would you do that, where the other one's just like, oh, that's just something right there now, isn't it? To that point, that's not to say that these characters aren't going to change as well as you make your way through the game. Quite the opposite, actually. They are going to change quite a bit. When they go on their own companion quests that you'll encounter in this game, they can all come to different ends, and they can all end up being either a completely different person, the same person as they started, or just slightly askew from what they originally started. This is just another aspect of the game that makes it so special, where you can see these different characters and you can do these different things, and the way that you interact with these people and the way that they interact with everyone else, and what you support them or don't support them on as you make your way through. It's just such a robust game, and it's so good to see an RPG fleshed out so well from experience of, wow, this just really feels like a role-playing game because all of my decisions matter so much. I honestly do believe that the only way that you're going to have the same experience twice with Baldur's Gate 3 is if you are really going out of your way to make sure that it happens through every choice, every encounter, and your class, your race, everything. To that point though, if you do want to have a little bit more repetition and you do kind of like the same experience twice, one of the fun things that you can do is take the same characters that you brought along on your last adventure, and you can find the person who's in the world who will actually just let them turn into a different class. A pretty fascinating thing when you really think about it, that you can have, you know, a party that is exactly the same as you did the first time, but you can make them conform to whatever race and class that you've decided to play on your subsequent playthroughs. So before I wrap this up, and I gush way too much about the awesomeness that is Baldur's Gate 3, this is not by any stretch of the imagination a perfect game. It is easily my game of the year, and it's probably going to end up being my game of the decade, and I definitely do believe that it has earned all the love and accolades it's not only got from the fan base, but from all of the talking head media people. But it obviously still has a few hiccups, and we should probably discuss those really quickly. Even though it had a 6-year development period, and they have still been working on it after release, as of this video, there are definitely a few bugs that could cause some folks some headaches. Sometimes the dialogue will hang when you're in a cutscene. Occasionally a cinematic may bug out on you. Even the camera can get a little bit wonky when you're having some of the encounters and conversations that you will see sprinkled throughout, and when I say sprinkled, I mean sprinkled everywhere throughout the game. Some of the companion characters also feel a bit rushed as well. Larian has had a lot of time for the first couple acts of the game, and the characters that you encounter in those acts have been pretty much play tested, and everyone kind of knows what to expect with them, and they've had their time to round them out into really robust characters. But you can tell that some of the characters you find in the later part of the game haven't had quite as much time in the oven and could use a little bit more bake time. Now, the bright side here is that Larian is hard at work at trying to make sure that all of this is fleshed out later on down the line, and that they are working at it right now. There's already been 4 patches out since the game actually released. Another thing to probably note here is that true purists of Dungeons & Dragons may also take exception to some of the liberties that Larian has taken with the system. I know that some folks are upset with how dice rolls are done in the tabletop setting of Dungeons & Dragons. Even if you rolled a natural 1 on a skill check, if your character's high enough level and has enough points in something, they can't fail it. In Baldur's Gate 3, that's not the case. You roll a natural 1, it doesn't matter what level you are, how skilled your character is, they screwed it up. Now, the reasoning behind that, and I think this is what Larian really wanted to have happen, was everyone, no matter how good they are at something, will occasionally screw something up. So while it seems a little bit meh, I can get why people who are true to the tabletop rules might have a little bit of a problem with this. There's also the case of being able to throw a healing potion across the battlefield. In Baldur's Gate 3, if you find yourself in the middle of combat and one of your comrades across the battlefield has been dropped by a group of people, one of your guys can just go ahead and reach into their pack and grab that thing like a baseball and just chuck it right across the battlefield. And as long as it splashes on them, it does the healing and they get right up and they're ready to go. Now, in the tabletop version of Dungeons & Dragons, characters actually have to drink the potion so that they get the benefit. You can't just smash a bottle of healing over someone's head and be like, I heal thee. So as we wrap this up again, is the game worth a $60 price tag? Yep. It sure as hell is. I'm of the opinion that this game could have easily been $70 to $80 and still absolutely been worth every dime. The $1 to 1 hour of entertainment standard that the industry kind of holds these days for new releases is going to more than likely get blown by everyone who has decided to pick up this game and play it. Even if someone who isn't really in love with it and just picked it up and they thought that they should experience because everyone's talking about it and they never pick it up again after beating it one time, it's going to be a huge surprise if they don't get at least 60 to 80 hours out of this game. And even then, if they do make it in 60 to 80 hours through all of the content that's in this game, they literally sprinted from the beginning to the end and did their college best to just dart right through it without experiencing the entire world that Larian has created with this title. If you enjoy RPGs, or you know what, even if you don't, Baldur's Gate is one of the next big, if not the next big thing. Not only has this game set out to do something and done it very well, But they have started, again, this firestorm amongst the industry about whether or not this can be a new standard that all games should be held up to. A game that has actually come out that is complete, it has entertained the player base, and it's not just a storefront for some mega corporation or mega publisher to just put out there and milk their player base for more money. I think maybe on the next video, we might actually talk about this huge firestorm that Baldur's Gate has actually incited when it comes to the industry, because there are definitely a lot of butthurt people out there right now. How this game came out, really hit the stride, is really complete, and how well received it's been. Hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, hit that like button, leave a comment, talk a little bit about your experience with Baldur's Gate 3, ask some questions if you're wondering about anything particular, and I will do my best to answer it. Make sure that you come back again and hang out with us and check out the Twitch stream too. If you're playing Baldur's Gate 3, I hope you are enjoying your time in Faerun, because it's an absolutely fantastic time. And remember, it doesn't matter how big the room is, it doesn't matter how small the room is, it doesn't matter whether or not your people that you know and love are in there, you always cast Fireball.